thank you all for coming out today. So I'm Dave Stefanich, founder, CEO of Rymedi. So I'm a trained inorganic chemist, software engineer, my MBA is in finance, and I grew up in the pharma industry. So I'm gonna use every acronym that this acronym heavy room doesn't use. So we'll be covering all that. Any fans of drug users out there besides me? That's good, you don't want to violate your HIPAA stuff. But we're gonna talk about some of the practical applications. When COVID was going on, do you guys remember the Moderna clinical trials? Anyone remember that? You heard about it in the news? Well, there was a blockchain-enabled tech company that was the backbone of that clinical trial that was being executed across the universities. So we've been in this company for about 7 years now. And when I talk about global compliance, we use protocol not because it was the tech, but it solved the compliance problem that we had for multi-jurisdictional use. What does that mean? US, we talk about HIPAA, we heard it earlier, GDPR for Europe, Public Privacy Act of 1988 for Australia, PPB in Kenya, and now the DHA in Dubai. So right now, we are one of the only patented protocol-approved backbones in 18 countries around the globe, and we're doing work in all those locations today. So what do we talk about? The high cost of healthcare. So let's talk about the real application. People don't buy tech because it's sexy. People buy tech because it solves a problem for them. And it's the high cost. High cost of collaboration, we heard it mentioned earlier. The high cost of how you bring data together in compliant data sets. And we heard RWV, but in pharmaceuticals, we talk RWE, real world evidence. And post-COVID, the regulations changed so that you can have collaborative data sets across jurisdictions to accelerate vaccination development, for example. So we heard about warp speed on the news, right? Those are being adopted today to handle these costs that are out there. But how do you take a real-world evidence data set and make it shareable across jurisdictions? This is an $18 trillion industry. Let's say that $18 trillion opportunity that we're taking technology that we talk about in here and apply it to this market. So the dollars to fund some of the projects I hear about in here are out there, but they sometimes don't understand our tech. They don't understand what we're trying to do, but we are in market today. Device companies. There's an interesting company out there called Inclora. They do earrings very similar to Oura rings. They run on a digital backbone called Rymedi. So they don't just work on women's health, they monitor women's health for clinical trials, right? That's real things that are out there today. In the global healthcare industry, it's important that you have sustainability, multi-jurisdictional, persistence, but you have to have data sovereignty. And you hear that term a lot in our world, because a compliant regulation that's applied to you when you're in the US is different than when you're in Europe. So how does the persistence of your health records and your health information over time, which is more valuable, across jurisdictions? Clinical trials might be sponsored in the US. Where they really run? Anybody know? New Zealand, Ireland, Eastern Europe, maybe Eastern Africa. We have presence in Kenya. We're doing those things right now because that's the way the industry operates. And they need a technology that would allow that multi-jurisdictional compliant backbone that Rymedi brings to the market. What the underlying protocol that's been interesting over the last 7 years, we defined as Cure Ledger. So Cure Ledger is the Web3 enabled protocol that allows this application called Rymedi to operate in these markets. But it does more. There's two sides to a market. We hear we're going to empower people's data, we're going to empower collaboration. You have to have a contributor side, but then you have to have a consumer side. And that data, that's real world evidence, how does it get over to the consumer side? There's something called a BAA agreement. So you have smart contracts that enforce the legal aspect of that transaction of sharing data. And the compliance. Mary may say she wants to have her data compliant in one jurisdiction, not in another. So within the protocol, we've extended that L1. It's live today. We're running lives on it. You can go out there and look. But what we've done, every single data element is encrypted by its own encryption key, which is the transaction ID of the node. And then we put metadata on it to say, behind that door, there's something really interesting for a Hep C study. You do the commercial aspect, you get a BAA agreement. And I go, hey, Mary, I'm going to look at your stuff. Are you okay with that? Yes. We have a contributor side and a consumer side. That's where innovation is fostered. Today, there are 3 different Hep C studies going on across the globe. Kirby Institute in Australia is one of them. There's things going on down in the southeast where we're from. They're not collaborating. Do you think large innovators, large health systems would be interested in all that information aggregated together so that it's more valuable to the community? Does it accelerate wellness? Right? You can have a tech company. Well, what's your mission behind that tech company and why you're doing things? That's what Care Ledger empowers. Today, go out, take a look. You'll see metadata. We can't store data on chain, but we can put the descriptors on chain to let people know where relevant information resides. So we take that a little bit further, and then we put an ecosystem behind it. So when people want to contribute, we have a validator network. We're running 15 validators across 3 subnets. The tricky part was, how do you have one token that runs across 3 subnets? I'll say that again. One token that runs across 3 subnets, because you have PII information, which is your SOC, your address, your transactions. I had an L1, an A1C. I had a lipid test. I had a blood draw done, okay? Multiple transactions. And that other key is the encryption, so you don't accidentally de-identify the information. Everybody heard about 23andMe, right? You send your stuff in, you figure out where you're born. It was just bought and sold. The right to that information that you had a contract with one party, the acquiring party doesn't have to honor it. Can you imagine if we abstracted compliance into a protocol that was agnostic of the commercial entity? So the compliance that I'm describing travels with your asset across the companies that are using it, because they don't control the right to the information. You have to empower it. Does that break down silos of innovation, that cost I covered earlier? Does it allow people to collaborate with these things? We've seen it done when thousands and millions of people are dying. Maybe we could just do it because it's the right thing to do. That's what we're doing at Rymedi, and that's what we're doing at Care Ledger. Today, we have clinical trials going on. Today, we're using medical devices. Today, we're doing diagnostic testing. How many people get packages from Amazon? Anybody? The driver shows up. There's a pretty good chance he's not stoned in the process. There's a company that tests those drivers to make sure your packages get to your house. That company has a digital backbone called Rymedi. So we're impacting every aspect of those things to ensure the quality of your life, healthcare, quality of life and what your assets are, and that quality of life and that life experience we all have is consistent. It's happening today. I can't stress that enough. They go, well, oh, tell me about your project. No, I'm a company. We've been around for about 7 years and we actually generate revenue. Oh, because it's actually touching your life and you don't even know it. That's when you know you've done something right in the technology world. I did want to include this slide. These are the 9 steps of the serialization that enriches the data as you go through. So if you think, wait, in the ERP world, you get an order, make an order, ship an order, bill an order. In our world, you identify a patient, you consent the patient, you have prescriptive authority of that patient, you draw a sample of that patient. That sample is analyzed, it's resulted. Sometimes it's sent back to the patient, sometimes it's sent back to the employer. Each of those steps are captured on protocol to ensure real-world evidence. I'm a device company. I'm going to go I sell this remote. It tells you if you're healthy or not. I'm excited about that. We go talk to them and say, you know what, if you put a digital wrapper around this remote, now I have a health platform for an entire company, an entire country. They get excited because they sell more remotes. Then I teach them that data that you generated is real-world evidence. I bet there's a market out there if you follow the protocol and that market's available. So when they thought they were creating just devices, they're creating wellness programs. They're creating health innovation. They're putting the data into a marketplace so that you can exchange that and create value and save lives. okay? That's happening today. So if we use the concepts and the technology of DeSci, and we talk about DeSci, and we talk about the proper protocol, and they're complex things. At cocktail parties, I'm not allowed to talk about the tech, and I'm not allowed to talk about the chemistry. So I stand there a lot and have a cocktail. But if you take those things together, that this room understands, and people out in the market that don't understand it, we educate. How do we take something that we're passionate about? I love coming to these events and hearing people talk about the tech. Because you can't teach someone passion about what they do. We blend passion with technology, passion and wellness. Next thing you know, today, there's a company called Additives. Go look them up. They're in Kenya. They're doing a continuous flow manufacturing, first plant in Eastern Africa. They're producing something called nevirapine. My dear friend, Dr. Frank Gupton, invented nevirapine at Virginia Commonwealth University. If you give it to a mother who has HIV and she has a baby, the baby does not contract HIV. The only way it would get funded by the World Health Organization was ensuring you could identify the mother, the real treatment got to them, and you could show that it wasn't transferred to the baby, so healthcare costs are going down for Kenya. Kisumu, Kenya. It's amazing. I'll be with those guys tomorrow. That's what you can do with what we're talking about in here. Just to put a concept, so we've touched a little over 1 million lives in 7 years. I always like to describe ourselves as a little tech company above the dentist office, but we've done a few things. Over 1,000 locations have been running ourselves around the globe. Various different projects, from the Kirby Institute, which is the largest clinical trial organization that's in Kenya, to the Onum Foundation. Our first project was in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. They have the highest infection rate of Hep C. Hep C is not a problem in the US because we have retail drugs and we can afford it. It's $30,000 a cure. There, they can't afford it, and it turns into liver cancer in 7 years, and there's a generation dying from an infection that occurred through a vaccination program. There's a global touch of what we're doing in here. There's a global way we can go do that technology. What's exciting about it is the secret sauce I'm going to share with you. You know, we are a derivative of an Avalanche L1 subnet. Working closely with them has been amazing. We extended the EVM to make it a compliant service. Run through that service, run the backbone, you're there. We work with great groups like Zeev on the implementation. There's just a handful of us. We want to change the world. Working closely with Zeev, we're able to do that. They're able to do deployments for us. We're trading these tokens across test nets right now. But people in the life science industry do not want sexy, okay? There's a thing, if you haven't read it, it's called Innovator's Dilemma, Clayton Christensen. Why don't people love cool tech? Because they don't like to do that. Our industry that we're selling to in the DeSci world, 3 basic things: fear, compliance, and safety. They're fearful someone else is going to do it, the government is making them do it, and they don't want to kill somebody in the process. So when we go in and we talk about innovative solutions and the ability to accelerate market is fine, but you got to address those needs. And I love reading Malcolm Gladwell, Instantaneous Cognitive Recognition. You can hear all the stories in the next few days, listening to them, and all of a sudden you're going to go, that one clicks. It makes sense. Somehow, a population that didn't want to play nice pulled off warp speed. Are the vaccines perfect? Absolutely not. Did it save lives? Absolutely. But the important thing was it showed the foundation for an accelerated model that Web3 technology, as an underpinning behind the challenges of an industry, can change the world. For a brief moment, we get a glimpse of tomorrow. In this room, I hear visionaries. To be part of that journey, and there's a young lady that I met that I was in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. I'm a dad. I don't speak Mongolian. After subbing out, I'm done. But I know what a dad looks like when he sees a daughter who's scared. We were testing her parents. And you think about what we do, why we do. We're gifted, very gifted to be in a room like this. It's extraordinary people. And to know, maybe for a brief moment, an activity we did here in Denver takes a ripple and changes the life of a little person somewhere around the world. It's amazing. It's an absolute honor for me to have an opportunity to share with you what we're doing at Rymedi, what we're doing at Cure Ledger. Anyone that needs help, reach out. You don't get it till you give it away. I just want to thank you all very much for the time being out here. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much.